Good evening, folks, everyone. Happy Thursday night. It is your interstellar host and the cosmic traveler, Joey Medea. Got to give a big shout out to my wife, to my co-pilot, Tanya, today. A lot of you have seen it on the Into the Outer Realms page and the Facebook page. Those of you who are listening in the middle of November, radio, audio only, really, really big news. So, many of you know that Tanya's been in health and wellness for a really long time. Yoga, Reiki, past life regression, soul contact, but massage has been a big part for over a decade of her work as a healer and a health and wellness person. And when we moved to Ohio 6 years ago, found out it was almost impossible to get your license in Ohio. So, like many things that are serious medical modalities, like therapeutic massage is. Tanya spent a year in school with intensive study. Each state has their own board, their own licensing board, and Ohio is tough, where it was out of the question that Tanya could do anything but relaxation massage. But they moved in the past 18 months or so, made it easier, but still really tough. And so one of the things that Tanya had to do was retake the national test, which is also serious business. Word is some people have to take it 5 to 7 times to pass. She had totally done terrific on it 10 years ago when she sat for it, and today she sat for it again, totally killed it. Congratulations, you passed. It's great. She's working at a terrific studio, already building a really good client list, staying very, very busy. We're just thrilled, and so many people I know missed that she was doing this. So our guest tonight, Wallace Wagner, coming back for the third time because we talked about Crossing the Crevice, we talked about Within Grasp, and tonight we are going to talk about the Nucleus. This has been a slow build for Wallace. He's going to talk about it, so I don't need to. I will read his bio when I come back, but I'm just going to roll the opening now. A ton of comments in the chat room, I'm sure, with congratulations for Tanya. I want to get to those, so here we go with the opening. Welcome. Oh, let me put the banner up there. Tell you, I thought I had it up there. We'll do that again. There we go. Episode 230. Thank you for keeping me around this long. I am totally honored. So welcome. Enjoy the opening with music by my son and with Tanya's voice. I'll be back, bring Wallace on, and we'll talk for about an hour.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
Okay, so Wallace has had a very varied, very, very interesting life, and so his bio is pretty long. I'm going to pick a little because he's been on the show a couple times before, but there are things I want you to know. Wallace was born in the small coal mining town of Logan, West Virginia. So I know we got a lot of West Virginians in the audience. Awesome. He received his BS from WVU, go Mountaineers, in 81. He did graduate studies at the University of Charleston and Marshall, the Thundering Herd. That's why I had my Thundering Herd gear on yesterday. That's my school there. He has gained a unique understanding of the Bible from 40 plus years of study and meditation. Please keep that in mind. during the course of the hour. Wallace has a keen eye for looking at the Bible through a different lens, yes, and a PhD in theology level of textual analysis, which is just amazing. He has witnessed his crafts. He also studies the Great Pyramid, crop circles, legitimate crop circles, he wants to let you know, eschatology, the early church, and the Bible. His studies have taken him to Egypt, Israel, and Portugal. His second visit, we did a slideshow, and we talked about a lot of those topics there. In 2016, he had a sighting of a white Tic Tac. He'll talk about that again tonight because it's seminal to his experience. And this event caused him to critically reevaluate his conservative Christian teachings. So just listen to, he has been a manager for 2 Fortune 500 companies. He's been a water plant operator, a mailman, a laboratory technician, a farmer, a coal miner, a banker, a phlebotomist, an EMT, a soil conservationist, an international salesman, and now, of course, the 3 books in quote unquote retirement. So that's, I think, well, he's been on Out of the the Outer Realm, the show The Outer Realm. He's been on Coast to Coast AM. And here he is with us tonight for the 3rd time. His website is otherflocks.net. Let's please welcome back for the 3rd time, Wallace Wagner. Good evening, sir.
Greetings to you, Joey.
I have been looking forward to this because in front of a crowd, so to speak, and all the people who watch it after the fact and share it all, I absolutely love the Nucleus, and I have so many questions. I've been doing nothing but thinking for the months that I've sat with it, and in the intervening weeks, and since the review came out, probably about a month ago. This book, The Nucleus, to me is the most intense. Did you know when you started with Crossing the Crevice, Move to Within Grasp, that you would get more intense, or did it kind of happen organically?
I like that word, organically, and I think that's what I'll go with. I knew I was starting a journey, and Crossing the Crevice was the start of the journey. And along the way, I picked up, some other people's opinions and life experiences in the second book. And in this final 3rd book, I just let the cat out of the bag. I went all out. It's pretty heavy duty, but in my world, 2 + 2 has to equal 4, 7 days of the week, not just 6, but all 7, and it has to be repeatable. And I just don't get that anymore out of the Holy Bible. One section is completely different for me now than it used to be, and things have just opened up, and I've just tried to expound on all the, I don't want to say issues, but differences and different lines of thought that you don't get in a typical church or Sunday school. I mean, for example, we did a study on the Book of Psalms when I was teaching Sunday school in the Methodist Church, and of course, every psalm they touched on followed a very strict, narrow agenda. Nothing is ever talked about the ones that don't fit inside, the box, so to speak. But I have tried to expose everything I can to prove that the God, or what we call the God of the Old Testament, is actually a living person who walked and talked and flew in a craft, without a doubt. And if you need biblical proof, we can get into that tonight.
Yeah, well, that's where people have to go out and get the book, because I double majored in theater and English literature, and same thing. It's all textual analysis. It's all close read, and you are expected to have proof for your theories. So they always talk about with the paranormal and the supernatural. I think it applies to a lot more. We'd be better off if more people, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If we all held ourselves to that, and you certainly do, sir, and 3 books worth of extraordinary evidence, I think our politics would be better. I think our interpersonal relationships, you've been a manager at big companies, I think that would all go better. I want to ask you something. about what you just said, and you said 2 plus 2 must equal 4, and it must be repeatable. So people talk all the time about the nexus between religion and science. Is it
Mhm.
quantum physics? Is it what, I've preached that in some ways, or believe that. But religion is a science in a way. The relationship. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on that?
There's definitely a relationship. Um, you know, everyone who seems to read the Bible can come up with a different opinion the way it is written,
Yeah.
and how you relate to it uh, is different for people as well. Some people take it literally. Some do not take it literally. Um, some believe it. Everything in there word for word. I've had big time discussions with my friends in the past that believe the Earth was exactly 6,000 years old, or it wouldn't be in there. So we can start from from there. But different people can get different ideas and create different foundations for themselves just from what they read or what they've been taught from the Bible. What you have to do, and what I have tried to do myself, is set aside all the commentaries, set aside all the previous sermons that I have heard, the homilies I've heard, and the talks and Bible studies I've been in. Focus on what it tells me. And when I have done that, I get something completely different than the masses out there, let me tell you.
I agree. I was raised Catholic, and I was a bad Catholic because I was a questioner. I've been a text analyst since I came out of the womb, and finally left the church because when I would talk to priests and archbishops archbishops and people like that, I never got satisfying it. I don't want to hear it's a matter of faith, Joseph. Oh, what the heck is that? Then why did you spend all these words on these books if it's a matter of faith? So we will get into that before. But I've been dying to ask you, what does the title "The Nucleus"? Why the nucleus?
That's a very good question. And again, it kind of goes against the grain of what we have been taught. We've been taught to pray, take what we have, expose it to the heavens, expose it to God, and get an answer. For me, that's a partial truth now. For me, I have learned to take everything that is out there, which I now interpret as God, and bring it into me, learning my place in the universe, learning that I have a soul, learning that I have an ego, which is sometimes out of control, by the way, and realizing that ego needs to be quelled. And I honestly believe now that the process of doing that takes many lifetimes.
Provocative. I love it. So I know you talk about it every time, but it's so seminal to your change. So you grew up, in a conservative Christian lens, West
Mm-hmm.
Virginia, so on and so forth. And then in 2016, you had this very life-changing experience, always worth talking about. So tell us again about it.
Well, I certainly was not expecting it. I was hard at work. I had just made a delivery here in Bedford County. I'm in between Roanoke and Lynchburg. And something or somebody told me to stop and look up. I was heading back to my Jeep, always in a hurry, trying to beat the mail truck. You know how it is when you're out in the country. And I looked up, and literally right over my head was this white cylindrical object that should not have been there. It had no wings, no nacelles, no windows, gleaming, radiant, glistening white, maybe a ratio of 5-3, longer than, I don't know. I don't want to say football because that's not a cylindrical, but a 5-3 ratio, maybe 50 feet by 30 feet, if I had to guess. I've been back multiple times. That is a picture very similar to it. That's not the exact picture, but that's a most representative picture. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I don't know how it left but it disappeared. It either went into another dimension, it took off so fast I couldn't see it, or it cloaked and was there all along. And I still don't have, those questions answered, nor do I have answered, was it theirs or was it ours? I'm pretty sure it was most likely theirs. But there again, you're wondering, why did it want me to see it?
Yeah.
Did it want me to see it? Did it know it was going to be life-changing for me? Did it know I was going to write books and for my readers, maybe, change a few opinions or at least plant some seeds that things aren't quite what we have been taught? And this resonated in me for several years. I did 2 years of hard study before I wrote my first book. And it was basically just a backup to recap things or topics in the Bible, such as, is the earth 6,000 years old, and about the great flood, and I touched on crop circles and how coal was formed, that type thing, and pictures of the stars and the cosmos, and how many trillions and trillions and quadrillions of galaxies there are, and for us to think that we're alone, how naive that is.
Yeah.
And touched on a little bit of secret government, which I still have a streak of that in me. I know for a fact we've got some pretty big secrets, and we've done some reverse engineering. I'm fully convinced of that as well. So there's a part of me that says maybe it is ours, and maybe all the cell phone cameras we have these days, and the releasing of the same white Tic Tac variety about a year later on TV.
Yeah.
The faucet's being turned open just a little bit more to where we're becoming more and more desensitized.
Yeah.
So I'm open for the fact it's either theirs or ours. I can accept either one. Without a doubt, there's a plate of physics that is completely different than what you and I know or have been taught, as well as the general populace. So in any case, it started a journey for me. I went to visit Michael Carter at his house. We had a nice sit down. I'm sure your guests and watchers know Michael.
Yeah.
And he convinced me I was on a journey, and a journey indeed I have been on. And in many ways, the Nucleus is the final my final thoughts of the journey. And I think that's the last book I'm going to write on this topic. I don't think I can pull anything else out to talk about, either from my brain or from the Bible from that standpoint. But
Right. I was going to save that to the end, and we'll see what's next for you, but let's hold that for now. And so while you're deconstructing and taking this careful look at the Old Testament God of wrath, your relationship with Yeshua ben Joseph, or as people know him, Jesus, right? But his formal name, the name that is most correct, really blossomed and deepened. And I have the deepest respect for that, because like I said in the review for the Nucleus, you could have walked away. In many ways, I walked away, although I still, I have many versions of the Bible, and I still go back to it, and I mark up my Bibles like any other interesting piece of literature. But you didn't do that. You didn't turn your back on it. You dove deeper into it, and out of it came this distinction, which I really want to talk to tonight. But can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Yeshua?
Sure. It has been deepened. I find his words throughout the New Testament to be not only true, but universal as well, encompassing everyone, every so-called religion or tradition in every country. His words are legitimate. And I have a hard time right now saying the same for what we call the God of the Old Testament. Marcion was one of the early church fathers, and he believed, like I now believe, that the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament are two separate entities altogether. And he really got a large following, so much so that the church deemed him to be an enemy and ended up excommunicating him.
Right.
But he actually is responsible for the first Bible, by the way. And if anything else, it put a match under the behinds of the canonists to come up with a unified canon. But I think he was right on many, many, many points. And, you know, I'll let that ride for now. Just let me say that my total focus now is on Jesus, because his words are true and universal. And, you know, Jesus actually said that we will do miracles greater than he did. John 14. It's part of John 14. Sometimes you hear it, sometimes you don't. But how are you going to do that in this lifetime? I haven't seen anybody move a mountain. I haven't seen anybody bring somebody that's been dead 4 days, back to life. And although I've heard about it, I have not seen anyone, walk on water. But for that to hold true to me, reincarnation definitely exists. And I believe that Jesus was aware that it existed, because he taught 2 tiers of knowledge. His disciples got the upper tier, everyone else got the lower tier. And if you read a lot of the books, including some Gnostic books that are not in the Bible, guess what? Reincarnation is definitely there. And in fact, it was okay in the early church. Origen was one of the brightest church fathers that we had. He was told he was thought of having the best mind. And you can read a couple of his quotes that were undoctored in the Nucleus, and without a doubt, reincarnation exists. And it was fine for the first several hundred years in the church.
Yeah,
we slowly got away from it, and once Jerome put the what we call the Latin Vulgate together, Rufinus had doctored a lot of Origen's writings, and by the time we got to 1100 AD, it's pretty much gone, all watered down completely. So it's no longer taught anymore, and everybody focuses on Paul says you have this one life. Well, I view that a little differently now. Yes, I have this one life in this one body known as Wallace Wagner. But my spirit lives on after I die. And
amen. That's right.
Most likely I will be back, because I have a lot more to learn, a lot more to experience, and a lot more of what I would call perfection in front of me, trying to become more like Jesus.
There you go. So you touched on it a little, what I was going to say next. I've always been drawn to the Gnostic Gospels, and it was wonderful. You had some of my favorites in here: Mary, Judas, Gospel of James, Thomas. Thomas is one of my favorites.
Oh, everybody's got to read Thomas. I put it in the previous book as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Craig Ansel just said that your book was delivered to him today. So terrific, Craig. It's a wonderful read. You're going to love it. But this idea of 2 levels of knowledge, and the church wants to keep you hungry, like everything. And really, so many cultures have done it with the mystery schools and all. And I've written about the fact that why so secretive? Why so limited? Why anybody who wants to take the journey and go all the way in this knowledge? And if it wasn't for the Nag Hammadi documents primarily, we would have lost what's most valuable about Jesus's teachings.
You're exactly right. But you got to think of the disciples really didn't get it. Could you imagine the canonists trying to get it, and then trying to create a new religion and have followers and create power for the church with stuff nobody could, get their hands around? They had to weed it out. They had to just push it aside.
Yeah. We talk in terms today about optics and brand. And if the brand isn't unattainable for the, so that you need intermediaries, right? That was the thing. Like, I'm a little kid and I'm going, well, if God is everywhere, why do I have to come to this building, which is nice and it's beautiful, and the statues and the stations are interesting, and the incense used to make me sick. I had to leave on high holy days. Now I love it. But why do I have to go to confession? If God is omniscient and everywhere, knows everything I do, why do I have to go to this man behind this little screen?
I love it.
Confess to him. I was like, I will cut out the middle. And mom and dad were like, no, 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 it's the middleman. Like, who do you think you are, right? Who do you think you are? So, but
Yeah,
you
you're
do
taught
talk.
God is omnipotent. He's omnificent. He's sagacious. He's everywhere. He's in everything. He's total spirit. I mean, even what John 4:24 says, no one has ever seen God or can see God because he's spirit. Well, 78 people for sure saw God in the Old Testament. And if you
Yeah,
include one of the Psalms that's never talked about, uh, uh, Psalm 82, that may be hundreds of people saw that God.
yeah.
So that pretty much rules him out. But let's go a step further, okay?
Let's please.
Why do we choose that God to be our God? And I'm referring to everyone, not me personally.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask that question is because of Deuteronomy. Would you not want the Most High God to be your God from the Old Testament? If you do, well, then it's not Yahweh. It is El, El Elyon. He was the Most High God. And he and his wife had 70 children.
Of
Yahweh
which
was one of
Yahweh
the
was
70
one.
children,
Yeah.
and he was the only one that was jealous. Now, they were all gods. Everybody got a piece of land. This is brought out again in Deuteronomy and in Joshua, 70 parcels of land. And, now you can understand why Baal was so venerated right next to Israel today. You look at Baalbek, Lebanon, very close, very close. And this Old Testament God was nothing but a local God, most likely a god of the Kenites, and he lived in the mountains of Seir. And this is brought out in several places. It's just over time, and by the time we got to the 7th and 8th century BC, it morphed into one god, and then he became the God of the Israelites and the God of the Hebrews, and then of course the God of the Old Testament and the Bible. And then when Christianity started spreading up north and west across Europe and over into the United States, all that came with us. And he's been elevated now from a local God who was not even the Most High God to the God of the universe. And I mean, you can't have this walking God who walked in the garden in Genesis, who walked around trying to look for Moses so he can kill him. He couldn't kill him from the sky. He had to walk around and knock on the door, and Zipporah answered. And then he changed his mind there. But you can't have this God that walks and that is in a human body or human-like body be God and make that jive with the references in the New Testament that God is spirit only, that God is love. Love one another. If you love one another, God lives in you because God is spirit. And no one has ever seen God or can see God because he's spirit. You can't have that in the New Testament and then take that God from the Old Testament to be your God. So for me now, I have pushed that away, being that I'm an ancient alien believer or ancient astronaut believer.
Yep.
Without a doubt, that God not only lived in a craft, but he moved around in a craft, creating the lightnings and the thunders and the shock and awe for the people on top of Mount Sinai and Mount Hermon and all around. That's what happened. And you can read so many places that it's always on top of a mountain. There's always thunderings, there's always earthquakes, there's always winds and rumblings and on. And without a doubt, it's a craft. But there's more proof. I'm just rattling for that. If you go to another Psalm, specifically Psalm 18, which is never talked about in church, you realize this really is a craft. He lives in a craft. And if you would bear with me a few minutes, I'd like to read a few verses from that Psalm.
Please do.
Can we handle that?
Yes, sir.
Starting in verse 6, and I'm in Psalm 18, okay? This is David. In my distress, I called to my God. Now, he did not call to the universal God. He called to his specific God. From his temple, he heard my voice. Now, the temple has not been built yet. This is from God's temple, okay? And the foundations of the mountains shook, and they trembled because he was angry. Now, listen to this. Smoke came out of his nostrils. Have you ever been taught that God smoked tobacco, marijuana, or anything? For the people that take their Bible literally, you can't get over this. I'm telling you, smoke rose from his nostrils. Consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. One of the 13 times he comes down. Again, I'll ask for our listeners and watchers, how do you go down if you're already supposed to be there? Remember, God is everywhere. How do you go down if you're already supposed to be there?
Right.
He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. Now think about that. Parting the heavens. That's like the UFO incident at O'Hare.
Yeah.
Everybody sees the craft takes straight up, melts the clouds due to the heat, and there's a hole right up through the clouds. And you have this dark clouds under his feet, debris from the craft, dust, debris. He mounted the cherubim and flew. Yes, God flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him on the dark and rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced with hailstones and bolts of lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven, the voice of the Most High resounded. And here, listen to this. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy. Now, what do you think those arrows were? Do you think he had bows and arrows?
No.
I mean, you can't get over that. That's some type of a beam out of the craft, which created this lightning. Could very well have been what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah from the sky. We don't know that, but I'm just throwing those dots out there.
Yeah.
Great bolts of lightning, he routed them. I just can't get over. This is definitely, a craft. And in the last part of verse 15, and I'll stop. The blast of breath from your nostrils. First of all, the temple is definitely a craft.
Mhm.
And this craft most likely rested upon top of Mount Sinai or in the mountains of Seir somewhere north of Edom. And without a doubt, this is one of the many places where you have to connect the dots. And you have not just here, but connect them all through Deuteronomy, Joshua, Exodus. And you will see that this living, walking, humanoid or human-like being must look very similar to us. He changes his mind. He comes down. He flies in a craft. He tries to create, I guess he wants people to respect him. But the only way he knows to create this respect is through shock and awe.
Yeah.
And it's something completely alien to me now. That's not how you respect someone. You respect someone in bits and pieces and let them see your true self. You don't take a bet and murder Job's 10 children who have been sanctified and prayed over and then replace them with 10 other children. Oh, by the way, all the other camels and cows and livestock, that's all stuff that we're told is taboo in the New Testament, but he has all these multiple tenfold increases. Big whoop. I mean, what happened to the firstborn child? What happened to the 10 children that were panicked inside the building when the winds tore the house down and killed them all? I have an issue with that, and I have an issue with children. How many times did God say, destroy them? Utterly destroy them on the march towards the promised land, which must have been perhaps Yahweh's parcel that he got.
Yeah.
But leave no woman or child behind, leave no animal behind. And we're talking about the Jebusites and all that list of people that they killed in their own land. Not that they were being invaded by them. They went into their land and killed them. And you're not supposed to leave anything behind. I have an issue with that, people. I really do. I mean, you look at Jesus in the New Testament, and suffer not the little children. The little children are something special.
Right.
And turn the other cheek with Jesus, and it's an eye for an eye back there. Are we to think that in 1 second when Jesus was born, that everything changed 180 degrees? I can't accept that. I know Jesus came to fulfill the law, but I have done some research on the word fulfill, and I can't make any sense out of how that has anything to do with Jesus being the son of that God. Nobody in the Old Testament transfigured, by the way, but fulfill, using a combination of Webster and Cambridge and dictionary.com, is something that is put into effect, or to meet or satisfy a need, convert to reality, bring to an end, meet the requirements of. That's pretty much the definitions. And people are told that he came to fulfill. Well, I don't see that. I see he came to change what had been put in place, literally 180 degrees. And I could even step further and say maybe correct what had been put into place.
Yeah.
I mean, turn the other cheek, love one another. That's mentioned some 15 to 17 times in the New Testament. Love one another. Don't hate one another. Love one another. It's something special to lay your life down for your friend or for someone else. We're all in this together, but not in the Old Testament. The only people that the Old Testament God cares about was his people. I'm going to let that go.
Yeah, no,
I've talked too much there. I rattled.
Oh, no, you didn't. That was perfect. And that really lays it out. So let me unpack a little. So this is a dictator. This is a warrior that's having these, you shall have no other God before me. That's where he starts, right? It's
well,
like
that right there tells you there's other gods. He
Right.
had 69 siblings,
Yeah.
including Baal, including Asherah, including Mot, and a host of others.
Who you needed to destroy it's like some of the people wanted to gravitate to these brothers, and he just wasn't having it. And then turning against Sodom, Gomorrah, pillars of salt, this different kind of thing. I think of when you talk about the children, and there's a lot of controversy to this, but Moloch, right? An ancient god who children was sacrificed to, and to think that these were interstellar travelers, it makes me think of Arthur C. Clarke's third law, right? Any sufficiently advanced technology, and you could say culture or whatever, will be construed as magic, right? That's what's behind. Giorgio takes a lot of crap, but that's really his. This is what this is talking about. These people wrote what they saw. They weren't metaphorists. So if you want to be literal, that's the place to go and be literal. So I'm glad you mentioned Job, because it's horrific. The idea that these two ETs, these two whatever, who have set themselves up as gods with little g's, let's call it, right? These little mafia capos. Oh, look at that poor schmuck. Watch what I can do to him. And he's so stupid in his faith and my power over him that I can kill his 10 kids. I can cover him with boils. It's horrific. And we don't. I see what you think about this. Well, because like I said, I went to Catholic school and all this kind of stuff. And I was about 21, 22 when I left the church. They push things on you so hard and so fast that you don't have time to stop and question, because you would go, what kind of God am I worshiping where he might pick me as a pious man of faith and destroy my life to prove how cool he is, right? It really the way that you present it, the way you slow it down, and to go through the folks. I'll just try to show you on screen. And I apologize, it's all marked up, which is actually a great advertisement. But these are all lines from the Bible that are supportive text. Now, whilst approximately how many different versions of the Bible do you work with in your textual analysis?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I just got yet another new Bible. I have 12 different versions in the bookcase behind me. My favorite one right now is right here behind me. Out of all of them, called the Keys of the Kingdom Bible. Let me get that focus. Come on, focus. Is it focusing? No.
Well, there you go. Well, you tilt it down.
Well,
you tilt it down.
anyway.
Yeah, because you have the blurred screen, so it distorts the things. But Keys of the Kingdom Bible. I'm going to write some of this down here in the chat room. Keys.
And what I love about
this. That out?
Well, that's a good question. It comes out of Europe. It's the Keys of the Kingdom Holy Bible, translated by Christopher Sparks, Filament Publishing. It mentions, this is one of the pet peeves I've had. The word Elohim was originally in the Hebrew text.
Yep.
This puts it back in all 2,500 places. Elohim, male and female, typically male, but male and female. God has no sex, by the way. Spirit has no sex. So that's another reason I cannot connect to God being portrayed in the Old Testament. For me, God lives inside of me, and he lives inside of you. And I'm going to go a step further again. Because Jesus came and said we're going to do miracles greater than he did, I believe I'm as much of a God. Now, be careful. I'm being careful with this. As Jesus was, I'm just lower in consciousness, lower in faith. And I believe that we have faith identified as wrong also. I've been taught that faith means respect. For me, faith means power. If you have the internal power, you can walk on water. If you have the internal power, you can levitate a table. It doesn't mean it's coming from Satan. If you have the internal power, you can move the mountain. But we don't have that power yet, and we're not being taught that power. All we're being taught is taking what we are. God made us. We have one life, and you continuously pray. And then the more you pray, supposedly, the more faith you have and the stronger your connection to get God to do something for you. When I think the whole gist of Jesus coming here was to teach us how we can start doing things for ourselves by following his teachings.
Yeah. They're there, and they're there in everyday language, right? The good Lord helps those who help themselves. Don't sit there passively pray and expect the universe to rearrange everything so that you can get your pony or whatever.
And we've had a few bright lights in the past, Joey. You coming from the Catholic tradition, I even put some of the people in there, some of the saints in there. We've had human beings since Jesus that have had some special powers, but in the Protestant, faith, we seldom hear of that. You've got to go searching to find them. Yeah. You've got to go searching to know that people can levitate themselves, and it's not something from the dark side. No. It's not.
No, that's where the brand and the optics come in, right? You were very, very careful, because if we say, well, if God is everywhere and everything, and I am here, then I am part of God. Suddenly people go, oh, ego. But I will tell you this: our youngest child, Joe, and our children were all kind of born old. They've been here several times, and they've been teachers, which has been very, very useful to me, and I've paid attention. They said some of the wisest, and they're smart, they're adults now, but they said some of the wisest things. Joe was just two, and she was sitting by my desk, and I had a picture of the Buddha, and she said, "Who's that?" And I said, "That's Buddha." And she said, "I'm Buddha." There was no context. There was no, we were not Buddhists. You know what I mean? It was a knowing that came out of the mouth of a child. Maybe that's why children were dangerous to Yahweh. Because they knew, they remembered their past lives. They were
Many
a
of them
danger
do.
to,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, so you suppress it. Children should be seen and not heard. Why is that? Because they make you think, right? Children say the darndest things. So Elohim, why is that word so important?
Well, it's important to me. It's more of a universal descriptive term for the gods, plural,
Yes.
including Asherah. Yes, there was a female god, and yes, she was removed from the King James Bible. And yes, Jehovah was put into the King James Bible, but all the other Bibles since then, no more Jehovah, and hello, Asherah. Asherah is mentioned some 40 times in the NIV. So um, there's so much that we should be taught, and we're not. And I'm not downing the church, and I'm not downing pastors, and I very plainly put that in there, or priest. They're teaching what they have been taught themselves, whether from theology school or what have you. It's just that we seldom are able to get out of the box. We're on a one lane highway, and if you move to one side or the other, you can either be ridiculed or your questions not answered, or we need to get back on track, or let's look what the commentary says, which we already know is going to fall right in line. Right. So and I had been a little bit down on MacArthur in the past. That's the Bible we mainly used, but every verse, I don't want to say every, it's probably 80%, that would take you off road onto another direction. It's mysteriously absent in his comments.
Yeah.
And that's what you get a lot. You have to stay in line, and you go to the bookstore to get your pamphlets, your Sunday school booklets, your Bibles, or additional readings. I can assure you, everything that is in that store is going to fall into the teachings that is already prevalent out there in society today. You've got to go outside, and you've got to do your own research and your own study, and that's exactly what I have been doing since about 2018. A year and a half after I saw The Craft.
Here's the proof, folks. And these are not your 6x9s like I publish. This one's pretty close, but I mean these are coffee table size books.
Yeah, they're
not giant print. So there's a lot of words, and Nucleus was very dense. And I mean that as a compliment. The other two books, you have a lot of pictures, and there are places where the Nucleus is very dense. It truly is a textual analysis. So I would say to you all that if you have doubts, if you have questions, if you're looking for, ammunition is the wrong word. We always have to use military metaphors. No good. But if you're looking for the proof right from the source, so to turn it back on itself, these are the manuals to do that. It is all there. Well, so I'm getting to the point in my life with all the othering and the division, and we have this election coming up, and I mourn the death of complexity. With this kind of stuff, you can teach a man to fish, but that is bad for the fish industry. So these guys need to keep themselves valid. The higher education system is a different kind of religion. So if you go to graduate school for 2 years, you can teach college. But a guy who's been in the field practically teaching, learning, practicing for 30 years can't get a job as a college professor. They are protecting their brand. If I can do it, why the hell should Schmoey over there, Joey, didn't go to college and he can teach college.
Smoey Joey.
So why should Schmoey, why should Schmoey get his master's degree and go $40,000 into debt when Joey's doing it? So much of what we run into in the pillars of our society, education, religion, politics, all this kind of stuff, is really protecting the brand. Not to sound like a broken record.
I mean, you are exactly correct, and that's the way it has been since about 400 AD.
Yeah. I mean, there was these fulcrum moments in history where, the conversations at the councils of the Trinity and the nature of the Trinity, or was Jesus man that, had divine aspects, or was he actually divine? And if those had gone a different way, it'd be a much different conversation you and I were having tonight, but they didn't. So here we are. Let me ask you this, because it's very provocative. And when I say provocative, it's a compliment. We need to be provoked. That's how we grow. So let me I'm sure the audience knows that when I say provocative. Jesus does not talk about the Old Testament God at all. That's
you
what
are
you
exactly
say
correct, and he
Nucleus
never mentions his name.
Yeah, right. That could be a pretty good.
You can just add that on to the other dots that you're connecting, and you'll see that for me they're all in a straight line.
Yeah, that one was a big one. So let's talk a little bit, because this hour is flying by, but we covered I believe we covered the bulk of it here. There is something I want to ask you though. Can you talk about, because you do a great job when you, in the previous books where you talk about the coal and the age of the earth and you apply a lot of science, could you tell us a little bit about the wheel and the bell that were in places that they should not have been, that kind of turned the archaeological record upside down?
Well, that was just examples that I went back to. I kind of wrote the Nucleus so that if you hadn't read my previous two books, Nucleus could kind of stand on its own. I did a little bit of refer back, but for the most part, Nucleus can stand on its own. They're called out of place artifacts, and the bale in West Virginia goes back to Buchanan, West Virginia. And there was a young fellow back then that most people in West Virginia burn coal, and you dump coal into your basement, and that's where you loaded it into the furnace. Well, he took a croquet mallet and hit a piece of coal, and out came this bale. And the bale was fully shaped, and it is still functional today. It's made out of a very strange alloy. And Garuda is on top, and that is an Indian god. And how did it get there in Buchanan or Upshur County, West Virginia, in a lump of coal? Also, there's a wheel, a wagon wheel, in the roof of a coal mine that was available to see. It's closed up now in Ukraine, near the city of Donetsk, which is where some fighting is going on today. It's very plain to see. And it's thousands of feet underground. Now, how did that happen? And if you tie just those two examples, and there's others out there like the London hammer, I'm sure a lot of people heard about, plus some things I put in my first book. It's easy to see that the Earth is substantially older than 6,000 years, and further, in my world, it's easy to see that there have been other populations on this planet aside from the current generation that we're in. We could be the third or fourth group of inhabitants on this planet, separated between either natural calamity, maybe a comet or a meteorite, or an ice age. Something happened and basically mostly wiped it out, and we started all over again, like a computer rebooting. And I really believe we're in the third or fourth generation of intelligent life that's been on this planet. And it's funny, but a lot of it has, duplicated itself. We're very similar to what we had maybe 100,000 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think it does kind of like it does kind of loop back, especially some of the provocative ideas about being in a simulation and things like that. Which I don't want to go to that. Wallace, I don't know if you know this. I want to point this out. I'm kind of known as an expert, dangerous word, but I'm known as an expert on the Mothman. Mothman, of course, was in West Virginia on the Ohio River. Here's what's very interesting about the Garuda Bell. John Keel, who is the leading boots on the ground guy, journalist from New York, who had some really interesting experiences in India, was a total cynic, wrote the book Jadoo, came back, wrote all this stuff. He believed that Mothman, he hated that name, Mothman was a Garuda. He wanted to call the Mothman prophecies the year of the Garuda, and the publisher shut him down. About the Mothman prophecies. So what are the chances that this out of place object with the Garuda shows up in fairly close proximity, if you think about how big the world is, to where what John Keel termed a Garuda, this large winged, I mean, come on, guys. What do you think? I hate to say, write in the comments and be one of those guys, but what do you guys think? A lot of you from West Virginia, I know you know about the Mothman. That was stunning to me. That was stunning because the odds, what are the odds? Now, my good friend Gary in Winchester, Virginia, would go, the odds are 100% because it happened. But yeah, but that's really stunning to me. I want to point out to everyone, and you alluded to it, you have a section in the book called Snippets from Around the Globe. And I love that kind of thing because my website, my kind of mission and all is New Mystics, and basically New Mix is pulling from all the different systems and looking for commonalities.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
That's what a New Mystic is to me. That's why I had Buddha and I had Jesus right next to each other. No difference to me. But you pull from everywhere from Kenya to Shinto, which is Japanese philosophy, Sun Tzu, William Blake, who I love. I love William Blake, a true mystic. But then you come very grounded, Oliver Wendell Holmes. But you have the Upanishads, and that's India, and you have philosophers like Kierkegaard. So I say it in the review, and this is one of the last things I want to talk about tonight. You belong to the Theosophical Society, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. How did that, from a conservative Christian growing up in West Virginia, to your experience with the Tic Tac, to Theosophical Society and Near-Death Institute? And
well, I guess we could do a whole nother show on near death and what happens when one dies.
Yeah,
I've got
do that someday.
For me, figured out. But when I was doing my research, I had to look at other truths and other religions, because if you accept the fact that the God of the Old Testament came here in a craft, then you have to accept the fact that the Varanas were real, that other gods came to other countries and created other traditions all around the world. They all came to teach. They're, again, the only God that really came to destroy, we've already discussed, but they came to teach. And a lot of these teachings, it's amazing, but they overlap and go hand in hand with what Yeshua taught.
Yeah.
Krishna, born of a virgin. Buddha, most likely born of a virgin. The teachings that they have, including being born again and reincarnation, and how everything is connected in the universe, and you are an active part of the universe. So am I. We're all an active part of the universe, and how it's all connected and played out. That we would love to think that the God that came down and created the Bible, that our religion and our tradition usurps everything else on the planet, of all the other times, of all the other countries. It ain't that way, let me tell you. No, no. We've had teachers all along from time to time. Most of them came from the sky. A lot of them that could fly, and they came to teach us, to share their information with us. They were travelers. They were explorers. They wanted to share, and that's why we have these petroglyphs and geoglyphs. You know, this was life changing for a lot of these people when they would see these crafts, or the people coming into our dimension, so to speak. You know, back then you could see yourself being worried about where you're going to spend the night, and are you going to have a roof over your head? Are you going to have heat? Are you going to have clothes? Are you going to have food? You don't have time to go make a rock carving, and it's life. It was a life-changing event for these people, and in many ways, you know, it has been for me too. And I'm very glad it happened. I am much better for it. Let me say, a deeper person now because of it. And you could insert some other words aside from deeper, but you know, I am much more well-grounded, let me put it that way. And I have my own view of the world now. And it's gone from a narrow view to an all-encompassing view to a universal view. I'm not afraid now of other entities. They may or may not look like me. I'm aware that it's the spirit that lives. Anything that's in a body is only there temporarily. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
That the spirit lives eternally. And if you think that you're just here one time and then it's all over after that, and you're walking on streets of gold with Yeshua washing the tears from your face, well, you can think that. And I used to think that. And I'm not downing you if you still think that. But the internal part of you still has not changed. The spirit is still not changed. You have not been perfected yet. And people have asked me, well, what does it take to be perfected? And I would say, you know, to be sinless. Of course, that would be the first thing out of anybody's mouth. But I think it really goes more than that. And you know, everything we say and everything we do, everything we think is recorded.
Mm-hmm.
Biblical. Shout from the housetops. I think for me, I've got that narrowed down to not even letting a negative thought enter my mind. How many times have you gotten to the point where you want to say something, but you don't, and you think you've really mastered something because you're keeping it to yourself? Nobody's going to know what you're thinking. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. For me, in the future, when I build up my consciousness, I will get to the point where I will immediately recognize a thought that goes against the grain of truth or against the grain of Jesus' teaching, and not even let it enter my brain. So it won't even be there to begin with. And that's how you become sinless in my world. There again, that's my world now.
Yeah. So I'm requesting of the audience really to take away two things from tonight, but to go and buy the book. And then I'm sure you'll, if you haven't already, and I know many of you have, do the other two. But one is that this entire journey, Wallace is not someone here to tear the whole thing down and tell you it's all a lie. I so admire that your relationship with Yeshua ben Joseph deepened through the process. So just have to say that again. The other thing, and I know we're already over an hour, you can say a little as much as you want. This has come to in a very real way. You've been tested the way Yeshua was tested in the desert, the way many prophets, and I'm not suggesting that you're a prophet, but people who have gone out and gone into that territory to question deeply have been tested. You had a profound experience while you were writing the Nucleus that caused you to make some decisions about what was in, what was not. As much detail or as little detail, or if you just want to say people have to read the book, however you want to play it.
Well, I was going to write a chapter that was going to take point by point by point and make the Old Testament God look undesirable. And I woke up one morning sitting at this computer like I am right now, and I had a heart attack. I knew I was having an episode of some type. And eventually we went to the hospital. Eventually I had blood work and found out that my troponin levels were not only high, but they were continuing to increase. So they transferred me to Lynchburg, which is a pretty good cardiovascular hospital here locally. And of course, I was admitted, and they did the catheterization up through the wrist. And while that was going on, I was semi-conscious, and I could see the doctor. And at first, there was a perplexed look on his face, and then all of a sudden, there was a smile and a relief look on his face. Come to find out that I have 0 blockages. So the question exists, if you have 0 blockages, something like 0.1%, how do you have a heart attack? Well, doing some more research, I've come to find out that it's called a Minoka. And you can have a heart attack without coronary artery disease. It can either be due to stress, it could be due to stroke, it could be due to perhaps the little arteries or capillaries on the external part of the heart that really don't show up on test. But none of that resonated with me. What resonated with me was that I was working on that chapter and this happened. Yeah. And some way, somehow, I was told to remove that chapter, and I did. And I watered down, so to speak, what I wanted to say. In fact, I didn't really expound on it. I made one ill-formed, long sentence and just put a few juicy tidbits in it and let it go at that. So there would have been another whole chapter in the book, but it's been taken out. And I think I have enough in there to maybe raise an eyebrow for a lot of people. And maybe, if they don't want to believe, then maybe I've planted a few seeds, and, maybe they'll sprout soon, or maybe they won't sprout in, for years. But at least I'm planting seeds. And there again, Jesus is everything. He's everything to me. I will proclaim him from the housetops. His teachings are real. They're legitimate. They are for us. They are for everybody on this planet. And with that, I'll say thanks for asking the question. And I've enjoyed your show.
Thank you. And I have I deeply appreciate you telling the audience about that experience. I am deeply grateful that you were here. We need you in this time immensely. And, Yahweh's records stand on its own. Sometimes that's
it's there, but you have to go looking for it. You have to go looking for it.
Read these books.
It's not, you're never taught that he landed his craft because he had to go find Moses so he could kill him. And this was right after he just agreed to pull the Israelites out of Egypt. Yeah. I mean, and why did he destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? He had to go down to see if what he was hearing was correct. He didn't know already. Yeah. I mean, come on, people. I can go on and on. You're going to have to read the book to see many, many, many more examples.
There you go. I like an author who does their own commercial. There you go. You guys, seriously, maybe start with this one and then go from there. Last question. If this is the trilogy, and you've said now on the show here that you don't see yourself writing on this topic anymore, what's next for you?
Well, I'm writing a book on my father. My family wanted me to. He's had a very interesting life. He's still alive. He'll be 92 this coming July.
God bless.
And it's basically just a family thing, so to speak. But he's had such an interesting life. I'm going to try to bring it out. So
that's good work.
That will be my last book that I'm going to get on with doing things for the betterment of society that I've kind of been putting off. I mean, I did not know I was going to be doing all this. I had bought a big fishing boat to go up to the Great Lakes to do walleye and smallmouth fishing. That was going to be part of my retirement. But the boat's been sold. So
wow.
Things have not worked out the way, all because of this craft I saw has not worked out the way I thought they would. But
yeah, no, well,
again, I'm a better person because of it.
Right. I thought I was going on a little vacation to a quirky little town called Point Pleasant on the Ohio River in 2009. I didn't know that it would lead to, the show and meeting people. So I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much, audience. Thank you all so much. We're back next week. We're Craig and I are, I think, tackling the thorniest topic, and we've done 9/11 and other things, where we're going to look at January 6th as honestly as we can. As honestly and objectively, contextually as we can. And I know some in the audience may not want to watch that. Go do something else next week. I love you for that. Have conviction. But we're going to give it a shot. We're going to give it a shot, Wallace, and see what we can come up with. A lot of questions there, right? So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Be well. Good night.
Peace and love to everybody. Good night.